Welcome to the College Admission TV Presidential Podcast. We sit down with passionate leaders in education for their thoughts and insights in today's world. We are excited to have as our guest Dr. Doug Mann, president of Bryan College in Dayton, Tennessee.
So when we talk about FAFSA, I know this year has been very unique because of the delays that a number of institutions have seen. And I know that those have resulted in completions being down across the country, but in particular in Tennessee, down 46%. So, how have the FAFSA delays impacted Bryan, and how has your institution, how have you tackled that challenge?
Yeah, I think probably every president is wrestling with those questions, right? The delays are there. We knew about them. We knew about these delays as far back as last summer, when the Department of Ed was noting the changes in the form, and then I started hearing from my financial aid advisors, hey, these forms aren't going to be completed until late December. So one, we anticipated pretty significant disruption. We anticipated this as far back. I was briefing my board back at our board meeting in October and prepping them not just for information's sake, but what were our strategies going to be in light of the delays? What were we going to do to ensure that we still had an opportunity to meet our class? And one of the things, it's a blessing or a positive, but also it's how you respond to challenges, right? Is we leaned into who we are. We're a small school. We are community driven. We're face-to-face driven. And so we leaned hard into that personal touch with families, with students, with the schools that are within our radius where we recruit heavily. We constructed a list of all the schools within 150, 200 miles and had a structured campaign of reaching out to those schools. How can we help you? How can we do a webinar? We've offered multiple webinars in January and February for those parents who they had questions about the FAFSA. Then we realized once you get into February, mid-February and March, you realize it's not just kind of general questions about FAFSA. It's actually about helping them complete the form, really coming alongside a parent and a student, and in some ways, not holding their hand, but coming alongside and really helping them move that to the finish line. And so because of the personal nature of our school and the smallness and all of those different cultural kind of community personal touches, we found some success in that. We leaned hard into that. And that's helped us just from a general enrollment. That's our strength. We should be good at that. And so that's really a key way for us to meet this challenge. The other side of this, and we're starting to see more in the news, is that this is not just about new students enrolling in the fall. The FAFSA impacts all the students who are in higher education. And so traditionally, your returning students, they do the FAFSA over the summer. And we began in February, March, working with our current students who are here on campus through our Academic Resources Center. We have chapel 3 times a week. We took one of our chapel programs and devoted it completely to FAFSA and FAFSA completion and helping our current students navigate that. That's actually, in some ways, been a bigger challenge is our returning students, and because they've missed out on some dollars, either more from the state here in Tennessee, because they didn't get their forms done at the right time. So massive delays. It does not portray higher education in a positive light. That's been frustrating with all of the news about the value of a higher education degree. Now we've got perceived incompetence from the Department of Ed to layer on that, and that's frustrating to have to respond to those challenges. But It has been a challenge, and Tennessee, as you noted, is also a state where the completion rates they're pretty heavily impacted,
Yeah.
and that we're tracking that here into the summer. Schools are starting to let out their graduations, and so we're tracking pretty closely with our local schools. What help can we provide for those students who they want to go to college? They just need to help get that finish line with the FAFSA. So.
Yeah, and I would imagine, as you had alluded to, the advantage of being a smaller school, a school that maybe is more intimate with families and with students. I think in a way, I mean that's a huge advantage compared to a lot of other post-secondary institutions out there.
I think so. Time will tell. This class, as I've told our team here, I think the data for everybody, this class is going to make later than many of our other classes, and I think we're going to see that across the sector. You're not going to see freshmen finalizing their what they're going to do for college until late into the summer, and that's not just at private, but that's also, I think, at the publics. So that's going to be we'll be tracking those trends pretty closely.
Absolutely, yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about the competition. I mean, and competition across, you can go across the country as far as how competitive it is to recruit students, period, for any, post-secondary institution. But especially in your own backyard in Tennessee, whether it be, public, private, faith-based, there's a lot of competition out there. So you talked about how important it was to go out and make sure this is a personal feel for families and get to know. So how do you go about protecting your backyard?
I think that is a very perceptive question that we wrestled with back about 6 or 8 months ago, that we had not done a very good job of doing that protection, that we had really relied, as many institutions do, on the more digital approach to recruitment. You have your name buys and all of the pieces that go in there, and that we needed to lean harder into the support systems, whether it's the vendor relationships, but also we had to lean hard into our own personnel to do that personal touch. And it was just some changes in operations, some changes in how we structured even the day-to-day operations in our enrollment office, that we had gone away from that. And so it wasn't just FAFSA, that FAFSA became part of that structural change, that operational change. But we recognized that if we were going to attract and be a relevant first choice school for students in our region, right? And this year we focused on 150-mile radius, that we were going to have to be much more personal in how we engaged, whether it's with the private Christian school, the public school, whatever that may be, the homeschool market. We had to do those deeply personal touches. You can leverage technology for that. And so we've been offering more webinars and that type of thing, but we also, enhancing the campus tour, structuring that in a way that really does highlight in a better way our story, who we are, what we're about, as a faith-based Christian institution, but does so in a way that also focuses on, hey, we want, do you want to be here? Do you want to be with us? Let's go ahead and let's make some of those applications and kind of closing the deal, so to speak. Let's go ahead and make those. Let's go ahead and do that. So it's just been some operational changes, and time will tell, right? We're still, like I said, 6 or 8 months into this, but some new leadership in the enrollment space here at Bryan, and we're really excited about the positive momentum that we have.
Well, and you had just alluded to the differences that you bring to the table. And this is something that that I think post-secondary institutions are always thinking about is, hey, how do we make sure that we are different than a school down the street would say? But then also, I would even say, not only the fact that, hey, here are all the great things that Bryan College can bring to the table, but how do you make sure that you can get that word out so that parents and families really go, hey, you know what? Bryan is an awesome place, but here's why, right? So it's not just the differences, but how do you make sure that the audience knows?
Right. That is probably one of the biggest challenges for a small school that doesn't have a huge marketing budget. What it requires is that we be strategic in how we use the marketing dollars, but also in allocating more into that space. Getting our message out is done through people. We're working to leverage those alumni resources. We're working to leverage those faculty and others that go out and speak on behalf of the college. But then it also means we had to enhance, and we really invested a lot more time, energy, and effort into our social media. We're still kind of in our developmental pieces there, but we've taken pretty good strides, I think, in the last year in a social media presence that is bringing Bryan and our mission of educating students to become servants of Christ, bringing that mission into more of those social media platforms. And so it is a challenge. We continue to leverage as well our partners, our vendor partners, to get that message out. They've been excellent and supportive in those spaces as well. So it's lots of different networks that you have to engage in.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And the other thing too, and I don't want to speak for you, but yes, there's a lot of competition out there, with privates and with the public system, et cetera. But I would also imagine that you can say, hey, Bryan College is here, and we're this many minutes or hours from Nashville, from Atlanta, from Asheville, from Chattanooga, whereas other schools can't say that as far as location.
Yeah, I mean, definitely our regional, regional proximity to all of those places is a help. Students, it's interesting as we deal with parents, they like to be more present, perhaps than when I was in college. Not that my parents wanted to abandon me when I went to college, but I went 6 or 8 hours away, and that was fairly normal. It seems now that students are choosing much more regionally. They want to stay closer, and I think the data suggests that. And we are seeking to tap into those different networks of students as they stay closer, and to say, hey, we're in a rural setting. It's gorgeous here. Good gracious, we're next to the water. The Tennessee River. We got mountains and rock climbing and trails and anything you could want to do in nature, as well as a great Christian institution where you can get a phenomenal education. So it's all of those different touch points that parents and students want to hear.
Yeah. Well, and now there was a recent report that showed that private universities, on average, have a tuition discount rate of 56%. So it's the first time over 50% over the course of an academic year. And so that's obviously, just generally speaking, I mean, that's a challenge.
It is.
For a lot of private institutions. And just, and you can speak generally about the market or about Bryan or what have you, but how do you reverse this trend?
I probably shouldn't give trade secrets here, for reversing the trend. We actually lowered our discount rate by 2 points last year. Nice. And very positive in that. Net tuition revenue was up. The discount rate was down. Thankfully, we are not at that anywhere near that 50% marker. That is one of the more difficult parts in my role as a president, but just for any institution, is navigating those the financial constraints. And it does require, we've been over the last 4 or 5 years in a pretty focused look at our finances and finding the variety of efficiencies that you need to making the cuts, the various higher ed trade publications have talked quite a bit about all the cuts that are taking place across the publics and privates. What was it? Arizona's cutting 200 million or so, and then you got other schools that are cutting 5 million. We've done that work over the last 4 or 5 years. We've made our cuts, whether it's unfortunately in personnel at times, but then in programs, reorienting our academic programming, whether athletic programming, we've had to make significant adjustments and cuts in those spaces. And so those, I think, contributed to our ability to lower our discount rate. We got much more focused in how we were scholarshiping our students. All of the variety of equations algorithms that you have to navigate through to find those students and to get for them to come then to Bryan at a price point that works for their families, being very aware of really the hesitancy for a lot of our constituents to want to take out loans, being able to navigate that with the families and with the student. And so that's for us. It's also about making that statement about why is a Bryan education different? You've talked about this a little bit, Brad, and what is it that makes Bryan different? Why is the investment significant? And it's a significant investment in the whole person, the development of that student, their head, their heart, their hands. Right? We're gonna come alongside their academic pursuits and help them grow academically. We're going to come alongside their heart. We're a spiritual institution. Very focused on seeing Christ developed in our students. And we're service oriented. We want to serve one another. We want to serve our community. And those are the graduates that we seek to send out into the world. And that holistic development of the student, that's who we are. That's what we're doing. And making sure that families and students have that message about us. That's helped. Right? All of that. It's not just the finances. It's that marketing piece, as you talked about. All of that has helped us to, at least for last year, and we're looking, hopefully to at least maintain that, but lower our discount rate and increase our net tuition revenue.
When you look at data, I know you talked about partners, and I'm sure there's internal resources as well, but data is a driver of actions, and pivoting where you need to. But how are you leveraging data today? You can take that in any direction you want, whether it be alumni data, identifying pockets where your alums live, or maybe even business partnership data, or programs or the job market. But what key indicators are you looking at?
Well, I mean, when you frame it that way, key indicators, your KPIs are always they're related to your enrollment and your retention. And digging, we continue, since I started this role 4 years ago, we continue to refine what we're doing in data around enrollment, identifying for lack of a better way of describing it, the right pools to be fishing in. It's great if there's 1,000 fish in a pool, but if none of them are gonna come to Bryan, that's kind of a wasted effort. And so you leverage your data to try to understand who's coming to Bryan, and go out and replicate that. And our retention, it's the same thing: who stays, who leaves, and then also what are we doing in that retention space to capture that student before they leave. We were able to share with our board recently. We had, I believe 4 years ago, mid-semester, fall semester, 20 students leave. For us, that's a big number.
Sure.
Right? Last semester, we didn't have any. So, and we had focused hard on what are we doing in that academic space, in the mental health space, to identify those students that are finding it challenging to be at school and to intervene earlier. And we found that information obviously through the data as we collected on our students. And so leveraging data in that way. We are actually, it's interesting you mentioned the alumni side of things. We have been probably inadequate in how we leverage data in that space. And so we have made a pretty strategic and significant investment into a new resource that we're going to be deploying in the next 60 days for alumni development, for alumni tracking, but also then the donor development side of things. That's going to allow us to do some of those things you just talked about, tracking. When I'm traveling in a particular area, identifying the alumni in that space, and then structuring meetings and all that kind of stuff. But it's all data driven, and so we're going to be stepping into that space pretty significantly here pretty soon. Again, it's one we needed to invest in.
So now, where do you see Bryan College in 5 years?
Where I see Bryan, one, I see us getting really close to celebrating 100 years. Our anniversary, centennial anniversary is 2030 for 100 years of being here in Dayton and being on this campus. And so I see plans being made to celebrate that. I do see modest growth. I don't think any president, if they're saying they're going to aggressively grow, I think the market is probably telling you otherwise, and they're probably trying to sell something to their board. That may sound a little harsh, but I don't mean it to be harsh. I just think the market is such with the demographics and everything that's taking place. If you can achieve modest growth over the next 5 to 10 years, is probably going to be a good thing. I think you're seeing a market that is learning much about itself and what it can actually promise and deliver. Whether it's the programs that we offer, you're seeing schools pull back on those program offerings. For us, it's refining those program offerings to achieve what we say we tell our folks they're going to achieve. I see that process continuing over the next 5 years. I see some facility development here. When I began, there were some. We were not in a situation where we had facilities that were falling apart at all. We're actually a fairly new construction as campuses go, and so we just needed to update. And I see that in some spaces here on campus as well. Some modest facilities growth and development. Where I plan to see the most growth would be in the endowment side of things. We're going to be focusing pretty hard into endowment growth over the next 5 to 10 years, and seek enhancement from our donor base and building out more on the donor side of things.
Well, excellent. Well, President Doug Mann of Bryan College, hey, thank you so much for carving out some time and doing a part 2 for us.
Yes, it's been great. Lots happened since the last time we talked. I think we were in the middle of COVID, or at least maybe we're just coming out of it. So I appreciate your time, Brad, and all that you at Plexus and your team do in support of higher education and support of schools like Bryan.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the College Admission TV Presidential Podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll bring you another insightful conversation with a distinguished leader in higher education.